I'm WWE Champion Grable, and you're watching the Pebble Podcast, brother. We interrupt your program to bring you a special message. Thanks to James Goodman Tattoo, the official apparel of the Pebble Podcast will be available soon.
What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of the Pebble Podcast. Special thank you to Grable, the professional wrestler, for that awesome introduction. We are back, but we do not have a guest, as you can see. That's all right. Today, though, we're going to be talking about professional wrestling and my experience with it. Now, I know what you're thinking. This might not be the topic for you, but I want you to give it a try. Give it a shot and see if I tell you something new or tell you something interesting, because I don't like wrestling for the same reasons that everyone else likes it. Everyone has their own way, so maybe I can convince you to give it a watch. So firstly, let's talk about what is professional wrestling. Now, for those of you who have never seen it, never heard of it, it is not like wrestling in high school or college. There's no real refs, no real wins, no real losses. It is a production, in essence. It is entertainment. That's why the WWE had to switch their name from World Wrestling Federation to World Wrestling Entertainment, because it's not truly a sports, considered a sport, I guess would be the correct term. The other reason is because some panda organization called the World Something Foundation made them change their name. World Wildlife, that's it. Okay, there we go. Anyways, so pro wrestling, like I said, is a production. It's for entertainment, purely to please a crowd. So it is scripted, and the end results for every match are pre-planned. Now, that being said, not everything in the match is actually scripted. Most of the time, it's done the way comedians do it, just improv as they go. So most matches can actually just happen without any pre-planning and just knowledge from the wrestlers in the ring. That's what they do like to be called. They're still called wrestlers. Like to just do it as they go. Some matches have what they call spots that are pre-planned. So if there's a big jump off the top rope or a huge table bump.
Are you watching? Are you even watching the podcast, brother? You better be watching.
Those are planned out. And they're not exactly timed. It's just a, hey, we're going to do that big spot we talked about. Now, you heard me talk about the word bump. Now, bumps are referred to as anytime somebody slams onto the ground. So a big table bump means somebody is going to go through a table. Just a standard bump means hitting the ground. That's just how they refer to it in the training method. Now, all of this interacts in the world of what's called kayfabe. And it's originally a made-up word. It wasn't a word until wrestling came around. But kayfabe is the wrestling universe. It's their own, it's their theatrics in their own universe. So in the wrestling world, something might be possible, but in the real world, it's not. The perfect example character of kayfabe is The Undertaker. So The Undertaker has died several times on screen, or killed other people several times on screen, but obviously in the real world, he is alive and well. Mark Calloway is fine. So that's the prime example of things happening in kayfabe. And anytime a wrestler does something out of kayfabe, such as break character, like a bad guy, talking to the audience, taking pictures with kids, smiling, that's breaking kayfabe, or breaking what they call the fourth wall, talking to the audience as if the storyline doesn't exist. And what's cool is that most wrestlers are so committed to their characters that they rarely break kayfabe. So the best example I would give of that is right now, Randy Orton is considered a heel, which is a bad guy. And whenever he's out in public, he does not take pictures with kids. He says mean things to people. You know, he doesn't look like a good guy. That way, he's always thought of as a bad guy. On the other hand, you have people who are faces or baby faces, which are the good guys. John Cena is the ultimate baby face. He will never be a bad guy ever again. And you can tell this because he does all these make-a-wishes. He's very involved with the public. He's always being positive and motivating to people. So they always play these characters, and they have to keep kayfabe. So you'll always hear that term kayfabe if you talk to any real wrestling fans. Unfortunately, if there's a kid watching this who doesn't know this yet, I'm sorry to break that to you, but it's all kayfabe. Now, moving on, you might think, well, if this is all predetermined, pre-planned, why do they have championships? Well, championships can mean a lot of different things. In any circumstance, it's still part of the show for there to be champions, and you have to think the champion is the coolest dude, or the bad guy that's the champion, you want him to be gone so bad. And it just, A, it makes the story better, but B, championships are generally rewarded to those with good work ethic. It's either going to be somebody who is super over, which means popular with the crowd, A perfect example is Zack Ryder, aka Matt Cardona, or Cardona is his real name, but he was super popular. So he got to win the Intercontinental Championship simply because he was so popular with the people. It had nothing to do with the storyline, but he was super popular. Other times, it just makes sense in the storyline. The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, just won the Universal Championship because his character was always counted down, counted out, never liked by the administration that is WWE, and they wanted for the storyline him to be the guy that came back and won the title. So that's another way. But other times that people can win the championship. By the way, this is what a championship looks like. I have one. But other ways they can win are by significantly changing themselves and working themselves into be exactly what WWE or AEW or any company wants. So a perfect example of that is so many years ago, I can't remember. I wasn't watching at the time, but Jinder Mahal was a WWE wrestler, but he wasn't doing good, wasn't liked by the crowd, didn't exactly have the physique that you would picture with most wrestlers. Gotten kind of chubby in the tummy, his muscles weren't big and bulky, but he took a break. He was off for a certain amount of time, and then he came back, and he was an absolute beast, won the WWE Championship, and it's actually on record that because he went and took his time off to make himself jacked, make himself super fit, and the ideal image that WWE has in mind, they gave him the championship. And not only did they give him the championship, but he got a reign of like a really long time. I want to say it was hundreds of days that he got to be the WWE champion just because he worked on his physique and showed that he was of value to the company. So I always think that's really cool. You know, that does show you that hard work pays off. And in the wrestling industry, it's not just about the storyline. It's not just about who people like. It truly shows that if you work hard, you will get to where you want, not only in wrestling, but in anything. Now, I actually love wrestling, if you couldn't tell yet, but I haven't always loved wrestling. I first started watching back in 2006. It was what was called the Ruthless Aggression era. It had followed up the Attitude era, and it was a new era in WWE because all the greats, The Rock, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Mankind, any name you can think of from the late 90s to the very early 2000s, before 2006, they were gone. They had left, they had retired, they had gotten old, and WWE needed a new form of superstars. Thus, the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era was born, and that's when I started watching. So it was very interesting. It was the rise of John Cena, other popular names, Jeff Hardy. It was a good tag team era, and I started watching. I was a very young kid, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, and all I liked was believing in kayfabe and believing in the story and thinking how cool all of it was. And I remember I could only watch the weekly shows, so I watched Raw and SmackDown. Generally not both at the same time. It depended where my favorite wrestlers were at. So when John Cena was on Raw, I watched Raw. When Jeff Hardy was on SmackDown, I watched SmackDown. But if I didn't have somebody I liked, I didn't watch the shows.
This is a shout out to my best buddy Kale at work. Tank tops for you, brother!
And I couldn't watch pay-per-views. They were $60 a month for a pay-per-view, and I simply, at that young age, I was like 11 years old, did not have the money to pay for that. And my parents certainly weren't paying $60 to $100, depending on which pay-per-view it was. And over time, I stayed liking pro wrestling and all the way into middle school, and I had bought action figures. I had like 113 action figures. I had all these shirts, all this apparel, all this stuff, and I was totally into it. And then something changed, actually. The funny story is, and my parents will laugh when they see that I admit this, but I was at a high school football game, and I happened to just be in a t-shirt that said John Cena or something, and a guy behind me was like, "Oh, I like your John Cena shirt." And he was like an old dude, kind of an interesting looking dude. And I don't mean to be the judgmental type, but he was just a very interesting dude. And he was talking about how he loved pro wrestling, and I thought to myself, am I going to like pro wrestling as an adult? Like, you know, I figured this was just something that I'd like as a kid, and I thought it was weird for adults to like it. I thought only kids were supposed to like it, only young people. And I actually, for whatever reason, got weirded out by the whole thing and stopped watching completely. I mean, stopped watching, got rid of all my shirts, sold my action figures, which turns out to be a huge mistake, but sold everything I had nothing to do with wrestling anymore. And I completely forgot about it. Stopped watching, stopped caring, didn't follow anything. And so that would have been 8th grade. Fast forward 6-ish years, just fresh out of high school. I was at the lake on Instagram, just scrolling like the explore feature, and I saw some wrestling. One of my favorite guys had made his return and won the WWE Championship. I was like, this is cool. Like, congrats to that guy. And I mean, I didn't get into it yet again. I didn't start watching it again, but I kind of just kept looking. And as I watched more on Instagram, it would appear more on my phone, and I would see it more and more. And I did this for about a year and a half before I really started to get back into it. And then it just clicked, and I was like, oh, a big pay-per-view's coming up. I think it was WrestleMania, and I was like, I want to watch WrestleMania. Like, I have never seen WrestleMania. I really wanted to watch it, so I was like, screw it. I got it for free, and I watched WrestleMania, and after watching it, I was just, boom, hooked all over again. But the thing was, it was for a completely different reason. I didn't care really anymore, per se, about the storylines. I just liked the athleticism of it, and seeing these big, huge dudes and awesome entrances and being jacked, and they had just had a women's revolution, so you had all these girls that were doing really cool wrestling moves, and I just thought, man, like, that's cool. And then I started to look into it more from this, not from the storyline, but from the writing of it and how they did things. So how they made this guy look like a good guy, and how they made the heel look like a bad guy. And I just thought, that's really cool how they do all that writing. And I dove into the writing of it, and I got infatuated. So here I am now. Fast forward, I don't watch the weekly shows. I only watch the pay-per-views. I watch recaps of the weekly shows, and I follow a lot of the wrestlers and all of the production teams and crews on Twitter and Instagram, and I just really love learning the behind the scenes, like the people behind the characters, which I've been fortunate that I became a part of this really cool community called the Major Wrestling Figure Podcast. It's ran by two guys that used to be WWE superstars, Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins. They both got fired, actually, so now they just go by their real names, Brian Myers, Matt Cardona. And I've been able to learn so much about the wrestling community behind the scenes, and that's what's made me love it even more. So the cool part is, if you find the right wrestlers, they actually are really into interacting with their fans. So I actually get to text with Matt very often. He sends me texts all the time. He doesn't always reply to me. I send him a lot of nerdy texts, questions, and stuff like that. But I've gotten really involved in their podcast and been able to really find a community where I feel like I could be open and okay with this. And that's actually what changed me into being able to talking about this on the video, was that this community that I'm in showed me it's okay to like pro wrestling as an adult. It's okay to think it's cool. And yes, maybe the moves are set up and the winners are predetermined and nobody's actually getting real punched. But it's still okay to like it, because I find it entertaining, and so do all these other people. So if there's people who don't, so what? They don't like it. Not my problem. I like it. That's all I have to worry about. So it's even further helped me in life with self-confidence of that, but also in my workout confidence. I watch a lot of WWE tryouts actually while I work out, because I think it's fun to compare myself and to try their workouts. Some of the guys, including Sheamus, the Celtic Warrior, post their workouts online, so I like to do his workouts like I'm my own WWE superstar and see if I've got what it takes, you know. So it's actually even inspired me. Not many people know this, a lot of my coworkers, but not many people in the outside world know that I'm going to be trying out for professional wrestling here soon in Kansas City. Hopefully, if they'll allow me, I'd love to show you guys, but no promises. Haven't got that agreeing yet, or approval yet. But without that, you know, why not shoot for the stars at least and give it a try and see how I like it. I'm very excited. But that's kind of my recap, or not recap, but summary of what professional wrestling is and why I like it. Hopefully, the next time you guys see a video from me, I might have a tryout video. It might not happen. I can't promise it. Can't guarantee it. Sorry. But yeah, so that is all for today. I appreciate you talking or listening to me talk about professional wrestling, and maybe I've swerved your mind on it. Otherwise, tune in next week. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Special announcement. It was me the whole time.
That hurt my face.